Hi and welcome to the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast for athletes, coaches and professionals who want to achieve their goals faster. I'm David Charlton and I'll be sharing proven methods from leading athletes, coaches and experts that will help you get the most from your talent. Today's show is sponsored by Functional Intelligent Training, who are a sports injury clinic located in Gosford near Newcastle upon Tyne and specialise in athlete development, nurturing future champions, strength and conditioning support and excellent rehabilitation services. Mental toughness for me is one of the most important things that any person, whether you're an athlete, a coach, a psychologist or a business leader, can look to develop. Especially now with COVID and the issues that it's presenting us. Researchers in academia and in applied settings have found it covers up to 25% variation in performance, as well as having a positive contribution to your well-being. So I'd like to think that you've got to agree that it is very important, is going to play a huge part in you being successful and happy in the future. And now if you've tuned in to Demystifying Mental Toughness before, you'll be aware about the 4C's mental toughness framework. And in this episode with Julian Dowe, a former professional footballer and now founder of Football for Football, you'll see exactly how important it is as he discusses conflict with coaches and teammates, being lazy, overcoming injuries, playing overseas and much more. It's hugely clear from our conversation that simply being talented and highly skilled in your sport or in your line of work is just not enough. And incidentally, that's the reason for me starting a 3-day challenge on the 2nd of November called The Confident Athlete. So on with the show. Welcome, Julian.
Good day, David. How are you?
Yeah, I'm pretty good, yeah. It's nice to chat to you, and it'll be good for the listeners initially to get to know you and know a little bit about your journey into professional football and what it is that you're doing now.
Oh, no, thanks, David. Yeah, my football career was typical of the era that I grew up in. So we're talking mid-80s, late 80s, as a 10-year-old, just playing in the streets with friends, no real aspirations to have a career in the game. It was just something that everybody did. The ball was on the street. There's about 50 kids just kicking a ball between the terraces in Old Trafford in Manchester, where I was brought up. And then that sort of progressed towards playing like junior football with your school, that was the only place where you could really go and play football, because that's what was there. There was no teams around my area for young players to play the game. And it wasn't until my brother, who was 4 years older than me, started playing for a team down the road, and his manager came down to just get the signing on forms. Is what he used to do back in the day. You sign the back of your little photograph to make sure you register with the league. And his manager saw me playing. I was about 11, 12, and he said, "Who's that kid?" He goes, "That's my brother." And he said, "You should get him down for the under 12s." But my brother, he had friends who lived down that neck of the woods where he played, so he got a lift. I had nobody to be able to take us, and in the end, the manager, just gave me the address of where to go, and I made my way. Me and my pal, we walked must have been about 6 or 7 miles before we even got to the game, and we played in the park, and because it was like a pre-season game, so there's no nets up, and it was raining. And I remember I didn't even have any football boots. I had a pair of trainers, big hole in the toe, and at half time I had to pull up my sock because it was coming out like a sausage, and I was sliding all over the place. But then I ended up scoring 3, and they said, "Yeah, we'll sign you." And then that was the start of my formative sort of like organised football, and it really progressed. So that was like under 12s, and then under 13s progressed again, and then I got picked to play for my town, which was Trafford, the borough, and again progressed, doing really well. Pretty much off my own back. Unfortunately, my mum was the one who brought me up with my brother. She was always working, so she never even got a chance to see me play as a kid, unfortunately. Then I started getting a bit of recognition, which was a bit strange because I only played football for fun. I didn't realise it could lead to anything. And then eventually getting scouted. So locally, you got Manchester United, Manchester City and Leeds and stuff like that. And again, I didn't understand the significance of that. And people telling you you're this and you're that. And because there was never any football chat in my house. So it wasn't even ever brought home. It was just what I watched on TV and then how I played. That was it. And then it started getting a bit serious when I started getting international and more national recognition, playing for getting put in the top 30 in the country for England at say 14, 15. And then I started thinking, hang on, okay, I must be half right.
Do you think it was quite helpful in not discussing football, and did it obviously took the pressure off you?
Well, you say it took the pressure off you. As a kid, I don't think you, again, yeah, I suppose you do. You don't really feel the pressure. It's only outside people inflict the pressure on you. And on one side of it, yeah, it wasn't a pressurized environment. But then on the other side, it was an environment that it couldn't really been maximized because I'm not saying that you don't get the support. There was things that could have happened earlier that naturally a parent or a network would have put in place for you. But because it wasn't there, I was making mistakes out of naivety as opposed to malice, but I didn't realize how significant they were in the future. Like things like not turning up for a trial or something, or not turning up for a game, where if you had a parent there saying, come on, get yourself there and this, that and the other, where I just, I'm not going to go and not really worry too much about it.
I'm with you. So yeah, the parent would, I suppose, keep you right with just the nice practicalities and keeping you organised in that way.
Absolutely, just a bit of structure and a bit of, in a way, like you said, maybe appreciating the situation a bit more and saying, look, hang on, you've just been picked. I remember I came home one time, I said, Mum, I've just been picked to play for England. She goes, all right, nice, son, what do you want for your tea? And it was just literally where I've got other friends who'd, parents have bought them bikes to get picked for the team, not even England, just for like the town team or something, and they're getting taken away on trips. And I never had those sort of incentives. I just loved playing for the sheer joy of it.
Right. And it took you on into professional football, that's right?
Yeah, again, all my friends were signing schoolboy forms at 14, 15, and I never really, and I was never really fussed by going to, sign for a club. And then it was only when other people started signing, I'm thinking, maybe I should sign for someone. And then I ended up signing for Everton. And they were really good to me initially because the guy who's the youth development officer was an ex-teacher. So he was going around watching Trafford schoolboys, which we were played for. We're probably one of the most successful teams in the northwest of England. And he was going on to these games, seeing these other players, and they had like the entourage, the parent, the gran, the uncle, the aunt, the brother, the mother. And they just saw me, without being funny, scoring all the goals, playing really well. And then when the game's finished, all the other cars go off and they just see me traipsing off, walking down the street. And then they sort of like followed us and said, what's going on with this kid? And then they watched us a few times and there was no parents to even speak to say, who's this kid? Who do we need to speak to? And then this guy sort of like knew, the family dynamic and sort of like the background. And he made it really easy for me to go to Everton, where he'd look after us, they'd get us all clothes and kit. They'd give us, expenses to make sure I was getting to school and eating well, for my mum, and, made sure I travelled. They used to cover, put me in a taxi from Manchester to Liverpool, for the late games. So I wasn't travelling. During the day, it was fine on the train, but the late ones had put us to make sure I got home all right. And he understood. And even when you used to stay in these things called digs, when you go in the school holidays, and all the other kids would stay in the normal digs, and I'd stay at the manager's house. So because he'd really put his arm around us and really gave us that bit of, understanding and nurturing. And then unfortunately, two events coincided. I got injured playing a game and he just got cleared out. All the backroom staff went, and I got injured playing one game, and I thought, that didn't feel right. I got a real strong whack, and I went going to the club for a few weeks for treatment. And travelling down on the train, they said it's a muscle spasm in my back. It would go as quick as it came. And then the problem was, it transpired that I'd fractured my spine. I didn't even know about it, and I was playing on it for a few weeks. And by then, I'd already left. I've already asked to leave Man City, leave Everton. And they were saying, yeah, fine, because the new people had never seen me play. They just seen injured on my form. And then when Man City got wind of me being free, they would sign me like a shot. And they took me to see the physio, and the physio said, yeah, you got a muscle spasm, but I want to know why a 15-year-old got a muscle spasm the size of an egg in his back. And that's when they got me x-rayed straight away, and that's when I found out I had the fracture. So I was in a back brace for about 8 months, 9 months, with almost like a straight jacket with metal rods around the back and like a full corset. And they still offered me a contract, even a pro contract. And the manager was going, you must be some player, mate. If we signed, this was Peter Reid saying, he couldn't believe that they were offering me a contract. And he said, Gaffer, if we don't sign him, somebody else will. And during that period of me, convalescing and getting better, your head starts wondering because, the club are keeping me involved in everything. It was great. I used to go to the home games. I was still at school. But unfortunately, again, that support base made people getting in my ear saying, you don't want to play for City. They don't give, young black players a chance and this, that and the other. And then you start looking back at the players that come through, like your Dave Bennett's, your Roger Palmer's, your Gary Bennett's, your Clive Wilson's, your Beckfords. I'm thinking, yeah, they don't. But not realising the game was sort of like changing and they had big plans for me. So I asked to leave there. And again, that was, if I have one regret, that was probably the only regret I have in football, the fact that I left Man City at the time that I did.
Where did you go to?
Well, again, I came quite disillusioned with it. I actually went to college. I actually registered to go college and I never did, but I was just thinking I didn't want to be in football and again, just all over the place. And I went to do the open day and then I'm sat there and they're talking to me and I'm there thinking, I don't want to do this either. And then I got offered a chance to go to Wigan. I went on trial at Wigan. I was at school, finished school, got on the train straight from school and played a reserve game. At half time, I got brought on. Within 10 minutes later, I got brought off. I'm like almost in tears thinking, what have I done wrong here? I'm only on 10 minutes. And the manager was watching the first team manager, guy called Brian Hamilton. And he just came down the steps and says, look, see enough with a 2-year pro contract, do you? And I says, absolutely.
So when you mentioned about the injury at that age, I know as career progressed, you had further injuries. Did you find that it was difficult to return from injury? Did it impact on your confidence?
No, to be fair, Dave, at that time, you're a kid, you're bulletproof in your head. You're invincible. In fact, it's quite tough. I thought it was actually, man, that I've had a broken bone. I'm going to bounce back. And you come back and I was always a very big self-motivator, so my confidence was never on the wane, but my understanding of the situation and not being in football or the whole football game became a bit blurred because I didn't have the mental, I'm saying the mental tools to deal with it, the doubt. And it wasn't doubt about my ability, it was doubt about the system. And again, because I didn't have anybody there translating that system for me or being a conduit between the club and me, and the club wouldn't tell me anything because I'm 16, and that's where there was the problem. But never with the injury at that stage. It was never a problem with the injury. It was more about how I was going to fit into the professional game and the resilience, because the game was changing. I've gone to Wigan with a very, very big ego, and an ego, 8 times out of 10 I'd back up, which you can do at youth level. It's only when you start going into a senior dressing room and these senior players, they think, who's this blooming so and so. and that's when you don't realise how impactful people's attitudes in the dressing room and the influence of senior players can have on a young player, because the manager's got to deal with the senior players before he deals with the young players.
So if you'd had like a support network around where you could, I suppose, express how you are feeling and just talk about things, you would have found that helpful at that stage?
Absolutely. Because and the things that were being present, the things that were naturally presenting themselves, I would have had somebody explaining, this is a bit different. Like, for instance, I'd be at school and I'd get a knock on the door and there'd be the football club there, generally, either Man City or Everton when I was at the time, and they're saying, Julian, the physio wants to see you. And I'm going, I've only seen the physio the other day, what's the problem? And then they'd end up taking you down to Umbro and you get a bag full of gear, or you end up going training with like the reserve team at school, and I was thinking that was normal. And people, if you had a parent saying, no, son, they're taking you out of school, you're training with the first team. I was thinking, that's just a game of football. Where are the rest of the lads? Why aren't they coming? The rest of my teammates. I really didn't grasp the situation.
You talked as well a little bit about like senior players in the dressing room before there. How did that go on to impact on yourself and the way you felt about yourself as a footballer? Yeah,
the senior players, we're talking around 92 when I broke into, when I made my debut for the first team for Wigan at 16, and the game's just changing. This is like 1992. And these players who've had great careers, when I say great careers, long careers, not necessarily, the most illustrious, but, good, strong careers. And as the game's changing, they could see, at 16, 17, when I signed my pro contract, I was on a bit, as good a money as they were for their career straight away. I had a boot sponsor, deal. Again, none of them had that. And I'm like, they're thinking, what's going on here? And they knew they could potentially try and break you psychologically, because they knew, it's dog eat dog world, but they could try and break the normal 16, 17-year-old. But again, as I said, my shoulders were as broad as the time. I backed myself 100% in my ability, which again goes well until it goes wrong, and then they're on to you like a ton of bricks. So you could do 5 runs, 5 shots, and the one you miss, you flash so and so, you're this. That's why you're not going to make it. And then that's when the doubt comes. That's when they start putting doubt, and then it becomes really a brick wall. And eventually, I remember at one stage you got to the point where the youth team manager was really, really doing me over. It was like bringing me in. As a pro player, you're contracted to the club 7 days a week. As a YTS player, you're only contracted to the club 5 days a week. So they used to bring me in on my days off. There was no day off for me. They used to make me come in and just run around the pitch one lap and send me home, knowing it cost me a load of money to get there on the train. And that was the kind of thing they were trying to break us, because the youth team manager, he had a great track record signing players, and the first team manager signed me. So he felt like his nose had been put out of joint. He's been overlooked, overridden. So when the first team manager got the job he got the Northern Ireland job, it was just open season. The blue-eyed boy, his safety net's gone, and it was open season. And I actually walked out at one stage. I said, I don't want to be here. And I literally went off for about 4 or 5 weeks, just stayed at home. And I didn't want to go back. And then one of the senior players, who was a decent player, played for England in the 21s. He played in the first division. And he said, look, Julian, you're going to wreck your career here. Don't let them beat you. You come back, good is always good. So be good as a player. So I came back and I got my head down, and I really, they made me play. I was a forward. They made me play right wing back, like in the reserves and stuff. But I remember in the first sort of like 6 games of the reserves, I scored like a goal a game from right back. And don't get me wrong, wasn't the greatest league in the world, and I was decent, but still, and they still wouldn't put me in the first team. I couldn't get myself back in, so I said, look, I've got no future here. And that's when I literally walked away. It was coming towards the end of the season, and I remember the youth team manager saying to me, I'm not coming in tomorrow. And he goes, well, we'll sack you. I said, whatever you want to do, I'm not coming in. And I just walked out, and again, didn't come back. And then the PFA intervened, and again, they're saying, look, you're going to wreck yourself. And the club are fining me 2 weeks' wages. Then I get paid for a week, get fined 2 weeks' wages, paid for a week, because I can only fine you 2 weeks at a time as a breach. And the PFA eventually stepped in when the season finished, because they said, do you want a fee for him? Because if you want a fee for him, you have to back pay him all the money that year. And they says no, so they let us go. We couldn't afford it at the time. And they ended up playing in Sweden for the summer, because I'd missed so much football, and the Swedish season started through the summer. And by chance, a representative from Marbella Football Club saw me playing in the first week when I was in Sweden, and I'd not signed. And then they came in, and Marbella offered me, at the time it was a 5-year contract when I was 18. And I signed that 3-year with a 2-year option. And that was 94. And to this day, still the youngest British player to sign a professional contract. So, and I went there. And again, it was when the foreigner rule was in. And so only 3 foreigners could play.
Okay.
But again, I've gone there now with my head focused in this. And whether you like it or not, I'm 18. You're living in Porto Venus in Marbella. It's not the most conducive environment to get your head down. And again, not having that steadying influence near you. Again, you're making mistakes as a footballer, but not as a teenager.
Yeah, I'm just going to take you back to when you're talking about Wigan there, and it sounds like it wasn't a case of like there was a collective goal and everybody was working towards a collective goal. It sounds like it was quite selfish, and there was a lot of egos involved, and you were caught in the middle of all of that. Yeah,
the ego came from the management side, and the dog-eat-dog mentality was that dressing room. Those guys were scratching for a contract every year. They were scratching for a bonus every game just for an appearance. They knew they weren't going to win as much. Yeah. And that club, it's come on in leaps and bounds from what it was. I remember playing Man United in the Youth Cup at Old Trafford semi-final, and we playing United playing red, we playing blue. We had 3 different kits on because we couldn't make up a full kit.
Right.
With different shorts and all this sort of thing. That's how bad it was. And the club's done great, and it's got a big fan base. But within that club at that time, it wasn't a particularly nice place to be.
So when you look back at that time, I suppose what would you have done differently, or what would you have liked to have got you through that?
If you would have had the sounding board again, you could have had somebody to validate the stuff you were doing, the things you're doing right, and you could have said, "Look, yeah, you're not doing this, but you've done that," as opposed to concentrating on the negative, which was just the fight. I was going in fighting, and it got to the point where I was playing for the youth team, and the manager who had the problem with the youth team manager, obviously I'd start. It wasn't a big squad, but they'd have kids at the side, and I'd just walk around. I was walking around the pitch, literally walking, not putting any effort in. And then as soon as he was about to sub us or get the sub to warm up, I said, because of that level, junior football, give me the ball, bang, score, sit back down. It was his mentality against my ability. And every time in training, every time I did something right, he never praised us. If I did something wrong, he'd stop the whole session and break it down and try and explain why it's gone wrong, because he's trying to be fancy and he's trying to be this, so that's what I was always up against.
So, yeah, in terms of actually trying to build someone up and give them confidence, if he'd shown some empathy and listened to you and praised you, then it could have been a completely different scenario.
Do you know what? It wasn't so much the praise, because, again, I would back myself, but it was just, I knew I was doing something right, because I remember one time in the first season, he was telling me, I had my first knee operation, I had my first knee operation at 16 as well at the club, and I missed, 80% of the season. And he's there. We have your book where they're going through your assessment book, and he's there, injured. You don't do this, you don't do that. And I'm there going, hang on. I said, it's funny enough, his name was David. I said, David, I've played 30 games less than the top goal scorer, and I've scored one less goal than him. So I said, I must be doing something right. And he goes, and it was a goal a game, literally at that level, scoring a goal a game. He said something quite funny. He goes, if you think you can go through your career scoring a goal a game, I would do absolutely amazing if I did that, Dave. And again, he couldn't handle that sort of conversation at 16, because I should have been, like I said, I should have just maybe shut up and put up, but I'd always back myself if they thought I was right.
Yeah, the thing is, it's a good skill, isn't it? It's a good quality to be able to talk and express yourself and have these sort of conversations with coaches in some ways, because there's lots of kids who won't, and they'll shy away from any confrontations and difficult conversations. I mean, I know it can be a bit of a coach's nightmare, but at the same time, it shows that you've got some confidence in yourself.
Yeah, David, I think of that time, it wasn't a case of, coaching was command coaching as opposed to reflective or feedback. I think today, stuff that, guys like what you do, they're influencing coaches because they're understanding the human psyche to a certain degree, and how if you get the player on side, you've got more chance of getting the best out of them. So that ability that you've signed them for, if you know how to manage that and extract that on a regular, consistent basis, then you've got more chance. They've probably trained, or they have people now like yourself who can apply different devices for these people. Well, back then it was just challenge, headbutt.
Yeah. Tell me about Spain and the move. What was it like playing in a different culture?
Again, it got to the point where I've always been quite an open person, so I took it as a life challenge more than anything else. It was great to go and immerse myself with in a foreign country, because I was literally plonked there on my own and just meet people. And because it's Port Benus, which is more of a Marbella holiday place, you had best friends every 2 weeks, people on holiday and everything. So you build great. So it allowed you to become a communicator. It allowed you to start fitting in, with people. You could sit with a professor and you can share a croissant with a drunk. It was no problem, because I just wanted to speak to people because I was on my own and I didn't know the language at the time. And not that I got brilliant, but the fact that I was trying to learn the language, the players really embraced us and helped me and were really good to us. But it was a challenge, because in England at 18, if you're not playing football every week, there's a problem. You think there's a problem, but in Spain they still class you as a junior player till you're like 21, 22.
Right.
And I thought, they're going to the older players going, Julian, tranquilo, relax. And they're going, I want to be playing, because again, the foreigner rule, only 3 could play.
Yeah.
And I was one of 8, so it wasn't a great experience as regards on the football side. Apart from the training was good and I played some good football, and that's why I got itchy feet. And then I wanted to go to, I ended up wanting to go to Spain. I wanted to leave and ended up going to Scotland, the Scottish First Division. And again, that was a shift in mindset at the very least.
In Spain, then, was the way coaches communicated with you very different to what you've been used to, or?
Absolutely. Simplistic, respectful to the point of they treating players they want you to do something and they'll show you and they'll articulate it to you. They want you to work at it, and they made the sessions enjoyable. That's what I said before about the training. The training was some of the best training I've ever had. It was brilliant. And and I ended up being able to do stuff that, I knew that I could do, but I could do it, almost like autonomously. I became silky. I became sharp. I became like, even striking a ball, I wasn't a great striker of the ball until I went to Spain. And then after 18, I could just ping the ball, like make it fizz. I can start, I always had the nice touch, and I always had the little chips and the flicks and the bends, but the striking of the ball. And that's what this coach, funny enough, the guy was a guy called Shekolarats. And Shekolarats was the captain of Red Star Belgrade at the Munich air disaster. And he played in 2 World Cups for Yugoslavia and was in the World 11 after both of them. That's how, and even at like nearly 60 with, rickets, arthritis in the 5-a-side, he could still play. He was ridiculous. One touch that you won't believe.
Talented guy. So you went on to Scotland, and were you able then to start applying those skills?
Well, again, it was from the frying pan into the fire. I've gone to Scotland to a club who, it was literally always, it was like the Raggy Dolls. It was a bargain basement. It was a club where they've got the journeymen, the guys at the end of the career, the ones that nobody wants, the rejects, the lads from non-league who was just a bit more of a big jump from the Scottish First Division, was too big of them. The club was lovely. The people was lovely. I went to a place called Ayr, lovely part of the world. And I've gone in with this, yes, I'm going to do this. But again, that mentality, there's a lot of resistance again. So the resistance was, the manager was a guy called Simon Stainrod, who used to play for Aston Villa, played for QPR, Sheffield United, big personality, very big personality. And me and him just bonded because he liked the fact that I played abroad and the way I could play. But he went too far. He became like my mate, and all the other players just absolutely, they hated him because of his flamboyance, but he was the man. And they ended up hating me because he put me in the best house. He was paying us good wages. He took me shopping. We used to go out for dinner. We used to meet for drinks. It wasn't, he used to drop me off back in Manchester after a game, give me an extra day off, even though I didn't ask for it. And he was only trying to, he was prepared. He saw big things in me. He was preparing me for the other side. He says, "You're beyond this. You're beyond this." And it was, like I said, it was good to hear. But on the same token, it wasn't good once he moved himself in the dressing room, because I'd come back from training and I'd find my kit in the bin and stuff like that, off the peg, we'd be training, and he'd stop the session after I did something good, and this is the way around, and he'd stop and go, "Right, that's why he's played in Spain at 18 and you're garbage." And again, so the players, it wasn't good. Or we're playing the game at half time, he'd come in and he'd go to the player, "You just give the ball to him, will you? I didn't come here to, and I'm there going, oh. And then it was all this. You'd come in, like Life of Brian. The lads would laugh, you'd come in, the Messiah. And it was just, and then the coup de grace, unfortunately. There was a player who was on his last legs anyway, as regards to, with the club's tolerance. And he did me in training once, and he did me really badly. Can you imagine twisting an ankle? It's painful, yeah?
Yeah.
Imagine twisting both of them. So if you twist both of them, you can't walk.
Yeah.
So I was in a wheelchair. That's how bad it was. And the manager ended up sacking this player. But it was an accumulation of stuff. But this was, the straw that broke the camel's back. And again, it just created, alienation. It created confrontation, and it just created animosity. And it wasn't the best scenario. But I enjoyed the actual football, of a bit of blood and thunder up there. It was interesting.
It sounds an interesting experience. Yeah, but ultimately, it doesn't help you just go out and express yourself as a footballer, does it? And enjoy the journey.
No.
It's, not straightforward in that way. Obviously you've talked about various different challenges there that you've come across, which has been really, really fascinating and interesting from my side. What advice would you give a young footballer? Can you come up with 3 takeaways from what we've talked about?
Well, the first one is work hard as you can. Leave nothing to chance as regards to your application. I still look back and say what could have been. And the what could have been is down to me to a certain degree. So always, if you don't make it, not everybody's going to make it. If you don't make it, make sure the finger's not pointing at you. It's somebody else's decision or somebody else's circumstance. It's not you. And I know myself. I didn't maximize my opportunity. I could have worked harder. I could have worked a lot harder. So work hard. Number 2, be honest. And being honest is being honest with yourself as regards to, suppose it comes back to that working hard thing, but also in situations, be honest with who you are as a person, be honest with who you are as a player, be honest with your teammates, be honest within the dressing room. And when you can do that, again, there's no ambiguity. If you're honest with yourself, you know exactly if you're good enough, you know exactly if you're not particularly good enough. And if you're not good enough for a certain level or a certain situation, that's not a bad thing. You just need to go and find somewhere where you can be. If you want to carry on playing football, nobody's going to play centre forward for blooming Real Madrid. It's not going to happen. But you might be centre forward for Crawley Town and have a great career and do something that many people can't. But be honest with yourself. And I suppose this isn't an overbearing statement. Be confident. Be confident. And the confidence comes in many guys. The confidence can mean, for me, it means being happy, It means being confident in who you are, being confident in what you can be. And again, we'll probably come to this when he came out of football. It was weird, I got to the stage where I used to be a footballer called Julian, and then towards the end, I was Julian who used to play football.
And see, identity shifted hugely.
Yeah, massively.
So you talked there about hard work, being honest with yourself, and then being confident. And obviously the first one speaks for itself, but the last two, it can be quite difficult, can't it, as a young player, to be honest with yourself, because you don't really know yourself and sometimes what you want at times.
And sorry, just jumping, you're right there, and that's what I've said, and I bring it right back to me. That's what I'm talking about. If I suppose honesty and confidence, you could have an overbearing one where you have a good support base. That's try and find a good support base, whether it be a mentor or things you can bounce off, because that will probably feed all those three things that I'm just mentioning myself. So I suppose it's overbearing. That could be one thing that will feed all that. But yeah, you're right there. You don't necessarily have the devices as a young person.
Yeah, and sometimes people, when it comes down to confidence, they just think black and white. I'm a confident footballer, or I'm a crap footballer, basically, and there's no sort of middle ground. So you've got to be able to, like you say, find devices to increase that and get better at it. Well, it's been fascinating talking to you. Do you want to just, before we end, do you want to just share what it is that you do now and tell the listeners whereabouts they can find you?
Yes, so for the last few years, I've been building a digital resource called Football for Football, and that's exactly what it is. It's football for the playing of football. And in some way, from what we've spoken about here today, David, it came out of my own experiences. So that thing where we're talking about not knowing what to ask, how to ask, or who to ask, this is where football comes into play. So primarily, it's aimed at people who play the game or involved in playing the game. So that's parents, coaches, and players. Young players and old players, and it basically puts the information that's normally afforded to the elite, at your fingertips. You can go on, you can find out about nutrition, equipment, training, injuries. We don't retail. We just have the best information around, what's required to play. And that comes directly from the players, unfortunately, what you've been involved with, and the experts who support these players, because hopefully there could be somebody who might have been in my situation when I was a kid, could go on, and when we put your stuff out there, there are things that will validate and underpin that they might be doing something right, or there's things that they need to address a lot earlier that they can either go and seek help for, or assistance, or apply themselves. So it's a website, it's very video based, there's lots of stuff you can go on there, it's free. So anybody just go to footballforfootball.com, and it's a numerical 4, and you'll find something regardless of your age, level, gender, or role in the game. We're all inclusive.
That's fantastic that you're sharing those type of resources, because ultimately it could make such a huge difference to, well, I was going to say to one young footballer's life, but it could be, tens and hundreds. So well done. Fantastic.
Thank you, Dave. But you mentioned the players there, but who knows? It could be that coach who doesn't know how to communicate properly, doesn't have that empathy. Could hear, obviously, we've spoken about, how coaches and how players like to be communicating, how we can get more from. So it's beyond the X and the O's. It's the kind of human life skills and the softer skills, as it were, that it needs, people like yourself to identify and hopefully help people with. Yeah,
and I suppose if it does touch one coach, the likelihood is they're going to be in charge of hundreds of players during their career. So it's gonna have a massive impact in that way.
Absolutely.
Appreciate your time. It's been, like I say, really good, fascinating chatting to you.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you being asked, mate.
Thank you. This episode has been enlightening, and I really hope some coaches have tuned in. Many of the scenarios Julian came across in his career could have been helped. As he stated, if he'd had people around him who had his back, who treated him like a human being, showed him empathy, listened to him, and then guided him towards his goals, a lot could have been very different. And the bigger picture gets forgotten an awful lot in team sports and in the workplace, where in reality everybody's working towards a common goal. In football, if it's broken down, everybody's working towards winning the next match. In the NHS, for example, it's simply to care for people and provide a good service. Yet egos and self-interest can take over and can have such a huge impact on a person's future, on their success, on their mental health. And this is one of the reasons why I'm running the Confident Athlete programme starting on the 2nd of November. Because I believe we all have and we all need the opportunity to be listened to. For someone to sit down with us, to plan our path, to look at the obstacles, and to be better informed so that we can go about our business in a confident manner. We can be more resilient. With confidence comes freedom. The freedom to relax, to smile, to have fun, and to fully express yourself fearlessly on the pitch, on the course, or on the track. And that's the point of this challenge. So please check the show notes to sign up for the free Confident Athlete Challenge, or go to the 3ws.sport-excellence.co.uk/challenge/. Have a great week, and I really hope to see you on the 2nd of November, where we can start an exciting journey together and help you take your performances up a notch. I'd like to give a big thanks to today's sponsors, Functional Intelligent Training, who are a sports injury clinic located in Gosforth near Newcastle upon Tyne and specialise in athlete development, nurturing future champions, strength and conditioning support and excellent rehabilitation services. Thank you for listening to Demystifying Mental Toughness today. To sign up for tips and advice to help you be the best that you can be, go to www.sport-excellence.co.uk and sign up to the Mental Edge newsletter.